All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Katrina Donaghy. I'm a local Brisbane business person here in Queensland. I have been given the privilege to chairing the next two sessions this morning. So first of all, we have Samantha Reynolds from Microsoft, all the way from Seattle in the USA. So she's just spent 20 hours flying, 20 or 26? 26 hours of flying to be here to participate in the Hopper Down Under. So I think, I always find it amazing when we have to travel overseas just how far we go, but it's always interesting when someone comes over here and we sort of empathise with them. So Samantha's going to be talking about blockchain from an enterprise perspective. As a former engineer, she's now in the product roles of Microsoft. So this morning she'd just like to take you on the journey about how Microsoft are looking at the technology and why. And then afterwards we have a 10-minute break and we have Huria from Monash University in Melbourne, and she'll be talking about data analytics. But and by the way, just if we, where the toilets are, and if we need to remove ourselves from the room, I'll just escort you out. We will be having some questions if you want to. There's a microphone just in the middle of the room. If you're nearby, please use the microphone to ask your questions. Otherwise, I'll be roaming. It's really important that we do capture your questions on the microphone because this session has been recorded. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Thank you guys very, very much. It's really exciting for me to be down here. I have never been to Brisbane before, so I'm hoping after this conference I get a day or so to go look around. I want to basically my whole point in being here is not to actually talk a lot about Microsoft. I probably will talk about Microsoft like 1% of the time. What I really want to do is make sure that everybody is comfortable with blockchain and the realities of what it takes to actually deliver a blockchain project in your business. Okay? And part of that, they have to make me do this about me section. Real quick, if you want to take a picture, I have to remember to walk back here. If you want to take a picture, the only thing you should care about is slideshare.net. Okay, and the reason being is you get my entire PowerPoint deck. Not that it's the best deck, but the speaker notes will help you because I explain what blockchain is in detail. I give you things you should consider because with only 20 minutes to talk, I don't have a lot of time to go over a lot of this. So I put it in the speaker notes for you. See, every page has lots of notes. Okay? Wanted to make it easy on you guys and so you have a walking deck to take with you. Right? This isn't like proprietary secret information. Everybody should have this so that you can be successful with your projects. Okay? All right, so real quick, come on. All right. Quick agenda. I'm going to talk about the basics of blockchain at a very high level, non-scary, non-engineering. A decision tree, when it makes sense to use blockchain and when it doesn't. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the change management and what you need to consider. Okay, in the appendix, I have links to learn more. I have a benefits analysis that little one-pager that I use in exec decks when I'm trying to convince a leadership team to support a blockchain project. Feel free to copy and use any of this that you need to on any of your business cases. If it helps you, go for it. I don't care. Okay? All right, so the first thing I want to point out is just an example of blockchain with IoT. This is top of mind for me. I will explain why later. But this is just showing a typical example of how blockchain and used in conjunction with something else. You almost never use blockchain by itself. You use blockchain with IoT, with machine learning, smart contracts, something else. Right? So in this particular case, you've got smart contracts, you've got IoT, and you can see milk starts off at a food processor, there's smart contracts in place, and there's IoT sensors tracking that milk all the way from the producer, from the farm, all the way to when it hits the retail store. And as you can tell by this example, the temperature had to be less than 10 degrees Celsius, humidity had to be less than 65%, and carrier 2 blows it. Temperature gets too high, that milk is no longer safe. Even if they cool it, which is a problem because, they don't want to be liable for this. Sometimes you have bad actors. They will misbehave. And then your ice cream is at risk. This is serious. In the US, we had a lot of ice cream recalled last year. This impacted me deeply. I was traumatized. Okay? And so with blockchain, with IoT sensors that you can have, say, report up every 15 minutes or report if they're tampered with or any of that other kind of stuff that would violate a smart contract, the retail store knows they don't even have to accept that milk when it hits their store. They can actually reject the order before it ever reaches them. and know exactly who is at fault and who needs to be held accountable, okay? So some cool stuff that's out there. All right. What blockchain is and isn't. There's a ton of crazy hype around there, and it turns people off from blockchain. A lot of your execs, your LT, they're like, we're not even going to touch it. Blockchain is all about crypto. We don't need crypto in our business. I'm not talking about that. I don't give a damn about crypto. Excuse some of the people in the audience that are into crypto. What I care about is blockchain from a business perspective. Okay, that's what I focus on. I spent 20 years in engineering before I switched over to product, and I can tell you right now, blockchain would have saved me a couple of years of my engineering career that I just wasted on data hygiene issues. And that's just one example. You start talking about audits and compliance and all types of other crap that we have to deal with, blockchain can really help you with a lot of common business scenarios. So forget crypto. You can see my analogy up there. Bitcoin is to blockchain like email or Twitter is to the internet. There's a ton of ways that you're going to use the internet. Okay? All right, so the next thing. When to use blockchain for business. I'm going to be real blunt here. It's not a magic bullet. It doesn't solve all your problems. You use it when it makes sense. You don't use it when it doesn't. It really comes down to trust as a situation. I wanted to put music in here, but it's being recorded, so. Okay. I know I'm not supposed to use Wikipedia in any educational venue, but I actually like this example. Distributed database maintains a continuing, growing list of records, right? Blockchain's immutable. You append data to the end of it. That means if you have bad data, you can't delete the bad data, you add a correcting entry of good data. If anybody here's into machine learning or AI, that actually gives you some really interesting implications for your algorithms, because you can actually train it what good data looks like, because it can look at past data that was bad and now it can recognize good. Okay? And if you're a product manager, sometimes bad data leads to unexpectedly good results. You also want to identify that. Okay? At a high level, if you walk out of here knowing nothing about blockchain except for this, then my work is almost done. Right. Blockchain establishes a shared, scalable, secure source of truth. The 3 S's, right? Secure, scalable, and shared, and it's a source of truth. That's what you need to know. That's what's really important about blockchain. That's the technology gap that it closes. So data stored in a ledger, I mentioned that. Every transaction is recorded. Now, in a business setting, we're not talking proof of work. We're not talking proof of stake. We're usually talking proof of authority. Right? I'm not going to reinvent my security model. Okay, I work for Microsoft, so I'm going to run blockchain on Azure, and I'm going to use Active Directory. I'm just going to add, you have rights to the blockchain because you're part of this group. You are already part of this group to get access to, this data on this website or this portal or whatever. I'm not going to recreate anything. I'm just going to add you to it. Okay? So from a business perspective, you want to leverage what you can where it makes sense so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of different blockchains out there. Use whatever one works best for your business. But just some things about, if you hear about consensus and all of that. Right? Everyone has an individual identical copy. Now that's a blockchain basics, but if you're talking about in a business environment, everyone may not have an identical individual copy. Right? Proof of authority. I'm going to put copies where I need to from a business perspective, but my partners don't even necessarily need to know that they are touching a blockchain. Just like they don't know if my backend's on SQL or cloud or whatever it's running on, right? So you only share that it's on a blockchain if there's a business benefit to it and if it makes sense. In a lot of cases, you might be running a blockchain for internal business reasons, and your external partners have no idea. They go into a web portal, some of their data is being written to a blockchain. They don't know about that, nor do they need to. Right? Blockchain is your tool. It's a business tool. Use it where it makes sense for you. Okay? The ledger can only be updated by consensus. I hit that just a little bit. We're talking proof of authority. So if you have the authority to update the blockchain, then you can. Okay? That doesn't mean bad data won't enter into my blockchain. Right? And we've all had that. I don't know about you, but for example, from a licensing perspective, I have some team upstream that is updating SKUs, and they put the wrong price on a SKU, and I share it out, and they updated it to the blockchain. I have to go back in and fix it, right? Like I said, I'll have to do a correcting entry downstream. Bad data is going to hit any system that you have. The nice thing about blockchain is I know exactly who did it and when. And so when they sit there and go, not me, I can sit there and go, oh, hell yes. And here's the cause. Here's the ripple effect. Here's how many transactions were impacted by your crappy upstream systems. And here's the cost, right? That used to be really hard for me to do as an engineer, and I used to have to try and track these things down, and data would be overwritten, and 3 months later they'd notify me, and the data had been overwritten 4 times, and I'm trying to track it back. Okay, I might be a little upset about those couple of years I lost to data hygiene issues. But there are some benefits to blockchain when you talk about this type of thing. You talk about blockchain being used in supply chain. Data is an element of your supply chain, right? Transactions, tracking anything. It doesn't have to be hardware. It doesn't have to be licenses. If there's a reason for you to track it and it causes you pain, you might benefit, okay? No information can be altered or deleted without everyone knowing. That's kind of immutability, blockchain, hard code forks. Avoid those. All right, so I talked about trust. Now, when I talk to students about this, or finance, man, audit grilled me on this and explained all the benefits that double entry accounting has had. But if you think about other things, every major shift we've had in business has actually come from a change in a trust environment, whether you had legal contracts for once, whether you had double entry accounting, I'll give them that, where you could actually validate and say, hey, this is how much I sold and this is how much taxes I really owe. Things like that. Cloud computing, right? People pushed back when that first came out. Not that I'm that old or anything, but they didn't trust the analysis that was being done, right? There was a lot of, oh, hold it, no, this can't be possibly right, when it was. So, it's really about trust. And blockchain establishes new trust boundaries. Like I said, lots of notes, lots of more things for you guys to review. Now, any big business has to establish trust, right? You have auditors, you have compliance, you have external auditors, you have taxation authorities, you have legalities around contracts and making sure that contracts were fulfilled. There's all kinds of things that go into it, and there's lots of third parties and intermediaries and manual verification you have to do if you're running a big business to make sure that you fulfilled on your commitments, and so did your partners, right? A lot of that work sucks, and a lot of that work can be done and automated by blockchain, okay? It's a gap. Blockchain can close that gap in a lot of ways. I'll talk about that going forward. I've heard a lot of people push back and say that blockchain can only be used in certain industries. It only makes sense. I'm going to call BS on that, okay? All businesses have some standards that it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, right? You're going to run into some of these things. You're going to run into asset tracking. You're going to run into cross-organizational workflow. Like, it's not in, the product and pricing team upstream did not intend to cause me havoc with overwriting my SKUs with the wrong price point, but they did, cross-organizationally. They screwed me up. So you have some of these issues. Blockchain helps with that. High assurance audits, there's a lot of work around audits when you're running a business. I don't care if it's small, medium, global, whatever. All of these things, doesn't matter what business you're in, you're going to run into it. And there's lots of other examples that are listed up here that we've got blockchain business cases for, and that I can't speak to exactly what Microsoft's doing, but we use blockchain for a reason, right? And we don't advertise it. I'm not in the product group, by the way, guys. I work for global business operations at Microsoft. We support the backbone of Microsoft around the world. So from a business operations perspective, that's where I'm coming from. Okay? All right, so again, going back to a secure, shared, scalable source of truth. Blockchain changes how your business operates by basically transferring trust from people to technology. Okay? That's where the cost savings comes from. That's where the operational efficiencies come from. That's where you get to automate all the boring stuff that you have to do, 3 days of updating Excel worksheets once a month for audit or whatever. You can automate a lot of that kind of stuff. You can put your people on more value-added work that they find more interesting, which helps you retain talented people. Nobody wants to update Excel spreadsheets for 3 days a month, right? Or anything else that, all the boring scut work that goes into running a big business. Okay? So it creates trustworthy B2B workflows. My partners, in some cases, know that stuff is stored on a blockchain, so they're not going to necessarily try anything funny because they know I can trace it all the way back, right? It eliminates the need for intermediaries. I don't have to have vendors who are doing certain validation. I don't have to worry about prepping for audits. My auditors can have read-only access to my blockchain. I can set up workflow alerts for them. Hey, you want to know within these parameters if we made a payment outside of 5% above seasonality? Here you go. You want to approve it? Here you go. I can automate all of that kind of stuff so that we don't have to, they know what they have to worry about because it's going to end up in their inbox. They're going to get a text message. They're going to get a call. Whatever they've decided that they need, they're going to get. Okay? And that just makes our lives so much more beautiful. All right. Synchronized data eliminates single points of failure. Even from a business perspective, you do have your nodes distributed geographically and securely. You do have to worry about in-country data rules, right? Your business privacy teams will talk about that. And number 4, immutable, transparent, single source of truth. This changes behavior in positive ways, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit going forward. Okay. It's seriously overhyped. I've talked about this before. So use blockchain when you need to transfer trust from teams to tech. This sounds a lot easier than it is. Let me give you some examples. All right. So when I do this within Microsoft, I actually talk to a ton of people, and I have to kind of reel them back. Because they're like, oh, blockchain's a magic bullet. It'll solve everything. And I'm like, oh, come on, guys. Nothing solves everything. All right, let's get real. It's a tool. It's a cool tool. It's a kick-ass tool. I love blockchain. But I love it for the benefits. I love it where it makes sense. And I'll be honest, a lot of times people will come to me and they'll pitch something and I'll shoot them down and go, yeah, nice try, but that's actually, I can solve that with a simple database. We don't need blockchain for this. You need to configure your database better or your security or whatever, okay? I have a really complex, painful eye chart kind of decision tree that is in the appendix. It looks like this. It will not only tell you if blockchain is a good part of your business case, it will actually tell you what to use instead. So, but at a high level, going forward, a couple things to keep in mind. If you have 20 business steps, only use blockchain where it makes sense, right? If it makes sense for step 12, use it for step 12. Step 6, step 3, don't use it where it doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to be used end-to-end in most business cases that I've run into. So, all right. So this is what I talk about with execs. I have that, really complicated decision tree that I'll walk execs through when they push back, and they will push back. But I'll talk to them about whether it's a business process that crosses trust boundaries, like pricing coming down to you and possibly being incorrect. Do multiple parties, even internally, manipulate the same data, right? Prepping for a product launch, you can run into this. Any type of thing, your supply chain. Multiple people are touching your supply chain and updating data. They could update it incorrectly or correctly. You want that to be able to trace that all down. Are there intermediaries that control the single source of truth? This one's a little bit painful for me. An example that I give is credit card banks. Right before I was traveling in May, I had a credit card get hacked somewhere. In the US, they don't have to tell you which vendor was hacked, was breached. And so I had that credit card update, a new credit card sent out for the 5th time in a year and a half, which meant updating all that kind of stuff. And it was like 3 days before I was traveling for 2.5 weeks. It's like, thank you. Yeah, banks, please move to blockchain, just saying. Does the process involve low-value manual verification steps? Excel, enough said. I like Excel, don't get me wrong, just saying. Okay, so success path. For everybody in the room, your engineers will love you if you keep one thing in mind. Don't expect us to code crap, okay? So by that I mean you can't sit there and say, blockchain will solve everything, and go throw it over the wall. Before you ever even get to, talk to my engineers, I will sit there and say, I want you to simplify your processes. Yes, I can automate this, but if your processes suck, I'm going to push back. Right? If you've got a whole bunch of unnecessary steps that were built up over the years on edge cases, but you applied those edge cases to every single thing, I'm going to ask you to simplify and standardize your processes. Fix it first, right? Engineers are expensive, and they're value resources. I love engineers. I might be a little prejudiced because I was one. I don't like to code crap. I don't want my team to do it. So simplify, standardize, analyze, then do blockchain, okay? I also want you to consider blockchain's impact to underlying org structures and the behavior of the teams involved. Right, this is important from a business perspective. Yes, you can use automation to streamline your business processes. That doesn't change some of the upfront work or the impact of the teams involved. An example here, this is a real live example, Microsoft Consulting. Issuing a letter of credit over country lines, boundaries. Borders, sorry. Old process took 3 to 5 weeks. New process with blockchain, automation, very streamlined, takes 3 to 5 days. The upfront work, though, to land that customer, to land that big deal, to close that, That doesn't change. Just because now, instead of being able to land a loan for a multinational company, it goes from 3 to 5 weeks to 3 to 5 days, doesn't mean the sales folks on the upfront, you can, all of a sudden increase their quota by 8 times as much, because the process is that much faster. So let's be real about this. You're going to be impacting the underlying org. Understand what your automation and your projects can do. And speaking of understanding, how I talked to you about ice cream? There's a reason that I was traumatized by this. It's because I deal with all of these groups, and I go home and I need ice cream and wine, sometimes both together. Okay? So dealing with engineering on blockchain projects is the highlight of my week. That is the most straightforward part. The tech has evolved so much in the last 3 to 4 years. There's still a ways to go. I acknowledge that, protocol wars and all of that. But it's a hell of a lot easier to code blockchain than it ever was. Right? It's pretty straightforward to a certain extent. What is not straightforward are all the legalities around a major new technology evolving. This is the same stuff when, to date myself, the internet came out. People were moving to the web, cloud computing, all of this. So your process, your product launches are going to change. Your readiness is going to change. GDPR, blockchains are immutable, folks. Figure out what that means. What data is going to be stored on-chain versus off-chain. This can kill you. Approval touch points. You're going to automate a lot of those. Right? And you're going to have trust issues where people are going to be like, okay, I'm not sure about this blockchain stuff. I watched John Oliver, and I'm really concerned. Right? So you need to sit there and go, all right, well, I can set up automated workflow alerts for you. Right? So right now, you're not comfortable with the technology. I'll notify you of anything that's outside pretty wide boundaries, right? Or pretty narrow boundaries. And then as you get more comfortable, I'll open those up, and you'll only get alerts over things that are much, your alerts will start going down as you trust the results, as you click on them, you understand what they are. This is particularly important for legal, for compliance, for finance. Any of those folks can shut your project down in a heartbeat. Do not underestimate the ability of legal in particular, or compliance to make your life a living hell. Lots of ice cream and wine. So, legalities, right? Records retention. Every big company knows that you have to store certain records for a certain period of time, right? How does that get tied into your blockchain? Security and access models. If you can use the ones that you already have, great. If you can't, you're going to have to recreate something. Compliance and audit. Even if you tell audit that they have access to everything now and they have workflow automation, they're still nervous, right? So talking with them through that kind of stuff. Anyway, so there's lots of stuff here, but this is what will keep you up at night. So I'm going to give a couple minutes for questions. Here's the deck. Remember, slide share, SamanthaReynolds.1. All the speaker notes. Here's the stuff that's in the appendix. Okay, I start off with a cartoon because I like cartoons. But it's a good cartoon. And then John Oliver on cryptocurrencies. He has a really good little animated portion on what a blockchain is and isn't. If you can't handle swearing, if you're a delicate flower, avoid John Oliver, but he is funny as all get out. So anyway, just some stuff. The links are in there. GitHub, if you're an engineer, all the GitHub, Microsoft is open source on all of that kind of stuff for Azure. Makes it really easy for you to code. Also Workbench. Okay. Here's the one that just will kill your eyes, but it's very useful if you're dealing with execs and you're trying to get a business case through, so you can sit here and say, well, this is actually why we recommend using blockchain. Okay? And this works for 80 to 90%. I put this out here as if it helps you, great, leverage it. If not, tweak it. Feel free to tweak it. Okay? And then this is also the other one that I use with execs, and I might highlight something that is meaningful to that exec for the business case and sit there and say, I'm going to minimize fraud in your area. Whatever it is that resonates with them. Okay? Questions?
So my question is, if you made a mistake, you can insert a new record to mark it as a update to the information. You can, within the retention period, you can add another record to mark certain records are deleted. But in a blockchain, they're not really deleted. So my question is so if you have a time window where you definitely need to remove.
Depends on what you're storing on-chain versus off-chain. So there are some examples. Let me give you one that pops up. Microsoft gets involved in a lot of legal cases. Not that Microsoft's being sued, but somebody maybe we're doing business with. And so we'll get a subpoena that will say, hey, we want all records of this company, the business they did with you, because we don't think they paid taxes correctly, right? Now, Microsoft doesn't want to share all of the data for all of our business partners, right? So in the blockchain, for example, if I were to store all company names and identifying information with hashes and have the actual real name of the company and all of that stored off-chain, then I could just give them the hashed equivalent of that company and say, wide open, read-only copy, read-only access to my blockchain. You can look for this hash, but they won't be able to recognize any of the other companies that we do business with, right? So there are some things that you can do around record retention if you're smart around how you set things up to handle not only regular cases, but cases like this, which people might not think about, but this is a real thing. You don't want to share everything. And so you're going to be really careful with what you store on-chain versus off-chain, right? And just understand the legalities around that. And that's why it's important to sit down with compliance, audit, your legal teams, finance, anybody who might be involved in this to see what your rules are. Like we have a records retention legal team, right? They have to bless everything that I do. In the back.
We've just got time for one more question because it's nearly 1 minute to go,
Okay,
Samantha.
sorry.
Hi, I'm really encouraged to hear you say that the tech's easy. So is there any particular products that you've found have worked better internally for you? That's one. And then the second part is, how hard is it to sell blockchain internally to the Microsoft team? Is that a battle that you have to do?
I can't talk about what we use. Okay. Microsoft does not have its own blockchain at this point, so I do use, and we don't care what blockchain you use, just run them on our cloud. Right? I'll leave it at that. I have to run them on our cloud internally. From the second part, it really goes back to the hype, right? A lot of people think, one, the blockchain is crazy hard. If you think about it, core tenants, it's actually pretty easy. Okay? Two, there's a ton of hype around it, and that turns off execs as well as everybody else. Most of the education I do internally at Microsoft is explaining what blockchain is and isn't. And that really helps. That education is crucial to being able to get business cases through. Once I walked audit through what I could do for them with blockchain, having audit behind you and wanting it really helps your business cases. Same thing with finance, right? Blockchain, I'm going to be blunt, there's a lot of hype out there. A lot of it's generated by men. Keep everybody out. It's so hard. It's so crazy. Oh, BS. It's not, right? Look past the hype. It's a pretty simple technology at root. It's not hard, guys. Don't listen. Just actually research. Okay.
We'll have to wrap it up because we're actually at the end of our session for this morning. Thank you so much. Can we give Samantha a round of applause?
Thanks, guys.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We're now going to step into our second session. We have Huria from Monash University in Melbourne, and I'm sure she's enjoying being in Queensland at the moment because this morning it was about 6 degrees in Melbourne. So I'm glad that you're here and your summer clothes because it's nice and warm. But Huria's going to be speaking to us this morning about big data, just some logistics. Obviously, we know where the exits are, where the toilets are. We will be taking questions if we get to the end and there's some questions. There is a microphone in the middle of the room. Please use that, otherwise I'll be walking around. If we don't get time for questions, Huria is available at the end of the session to ask any questions. But I'm going to hand it over to her now, and let's make her welcome.
Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks everyone for being here today. It's my great pleasure to be here talking about part of my research among all these incredible women in technology. So about me, I'm a research fellow in the Faculty of IT at Monash University. My background is in software engineering and data analytics, and I've worked both in industry and university, and part of the research that I do currently is based on my own experience in industry. I work in data analytics. I design tools and techniques and visual languages for data analytics applications. And I'm one of the 2 women in our group of 18 software engineers at Monash. So I'll be talking about tools and techniques for big data analytics, and my talk will be in 3 parts. The first part, I'll introduce data analytics applications and the challenges for industry in using data analytics to improve their decision making and improve the solutions. In the second part, I'll introduce lots of different tools and techniques that you can use to apply data analytics to your solutions, and an analysis and review of those tools. And finally, I'll introduce our tool or research that we are currently doing related to this field. So data and analytics are everywhere these days, and they're commonly used by different industrial sectors such as education, finance, transportation, health, and many others to analyze this incredible amount of data and information that comes from different variety of different resources such as IoT devices and sensors and images, medical images, all these to improve their decision making. But there are many, many different challenges that industries facing in applying data analytics to their solutions. One of the problems is that data analytics applications are very complicated. They are so they consist of many, many different stages, and they start from classifying the problem. So it means that when you decide, or when someone decides to apply data analytics, there is no data analytics problem that they can directly apply and solve it. So what they need to do is to define a data analytics problem and to convert the problem that they are facing to a data analytics problem. So once they have defined a problem, they need to find where to collect data, what are the resources, which companies they can buy data, and where are the organizations that they can help them with acquiring data. And then once they have the data ready, they need to process data. They need to clean data. Data comes from different resources, from IoT devices, sensors, from medical images, from emails. There's some structured, some are unstructured. So what they need to do is to process all these data items that come from different resources. They need to clean. They need to wrangle, transfer them, so that it's usable by by machine learning and data analytics applications. So these 3 parts take almost 35 to 75% of the whole project, but they usually are assumed that are done. No one knows that data scientists are spending most of the time cleaning data, wrangling data, processing data to be able to apply different machine learning and data analytics applications. So everyone's assuming that machine learning and data applying different models are the most important part of the project. So once they have the data ready, then they can apply different kinds of machine learning models. They can tune different parameters. They need to find the best model for their problem, and then they can validate and tune parameters, validate and find the best model, and finally they can deploy their model. And it is also complicated because it's not only complicated and it's not only complex, and it involves many, many different stages. It's because it is a collaboration between many different stakeholders from different organizations. So we have data scientists with data science and programming background. We have software engineers with technical software engineering background. We have domain experts with different domain knowledge, such as health, transportation, banking, all these. And we have business managers who don't have a background in either domain or the programming or data science. So how currently data scientists do all these? They run a lot of different interviews with domain experts, with business managers. They generate a lot of different handwritten brainstorming information. They visualize data. They use a lot of different tools to do this visualization and applying different machine learning models. They collect data from different organizations. They buy data from different companies. And they generate a lot of different code and scripts written in different languages. So what are some of the challenges they're facing? So as we discussed, it adds complexity to the problem. and the need to have domain knowledge and the fact that data scientists are not experienced in all these different domains that they're applying data analytics to are one of the problems. And they require a lot of different data scientists, and that's why data scientists are in demand these days. So they need to hire data scientists for every project that they have. And the problem is that there's no common language between all these participants. So data scientists don't have, as I mentioned earlier, data scientists don't have domain expertise, and domain experts don't have programming and data science knowledge. And the lack of reusability. So this is a problem for both small and large organizations. So small organizations usually don't have anything to start with, and then they have to have a team of data scientists and software engineers to work together, and then they have a solution. But later, when they want to reuse it, they're not able to reuse it. They need to have those data scientists back because they don't have enough knowledge. And for large organizations, there are usually many different subgroups running different data analytics applications, and they're usually not even aware of what's going on in other parts of the industry. So this is the second part. I'm going to talk about existing tools for data analytics. There are many different tools out there that you can use to apply data analytics. So we've divided all these tools to from three different perspectives. The first one is data operations. You can use a lot of different tools such as Tableau, Plotly, Trifactor, Wrangler. You can use all these and then apply some cleaning, visualization, wrangling on your data, and then you can get some idea of what is going on in your data. And then later you can use some other tools that are classified from the perspective of machine learning and data science to apply different machine learning models and compare the results and get choose the best model for your application. So there are a lot of different tools such as Azure ML, Amazon, Google, BigML, Veka, all these that you can use. And finally, there are some very advanced tools such as RapidMiner, NIME, DataRobot, all these that you can use to even deploy your model and merge it with your current application. So what are the gaps in these existing tools? The problem is that, as we discussed, machine learning and data analytics are only a very small part of the whole life cycle of software development life cycle. There are many different steps involved. As we mentioned, you first need to define the problem and convert it to a machine learning and data analytics problem. But even before that, you need to analyze all these requirements and design. So you need to find the objectives, the target, that the users that you're targeting, and designing the problem. And then once you have the problem ready, you need to test it and maintain it over time. So none of these tools consider all these steps. They all assume that. So once you start using all these, they ask you to upload a data set. So they all assume that you have done all these steps. You've done analysis, you've recorded requirements, objectives, and you have defined your problem. You have collected all these data items from different resources. You've merged them, and then you can use these tools to do the cleaning and wrangling and data operations and AI operations for you. But in fact, this black box here is only a very small part of the whole project. And what you need to do, what you need to have is a tool that covers all the steps of AI software development lifecycle. And you also need to capture all these requirements and changes. So there are many different changes happening throughout the project. So what you need to have is to record all these and document and capture all these requirements and changes. It needs to be easy to understand and use for both for data scientists with technical and programming background, as well as domain experts with no programming or data science background. So it needs to have flexible options for all these stakeholders. If a data scientist needs to make some changes, or if they want some more capabilities, then they need to be able to have flexible options to do all these. And it needs to enable collaboration between all these members. So as we discussed, there are many, many different stakeholders involved, and what we need to do. The current tools, the existing tools, are mostly used by data scientists, not by business managers or domain experts. But they're usually not aware of what's going on throughout the process. And finally, it needs to be fully or partially automated. So in this case, we would be able to reuse the solution, the current solution, for future projects or for the other parts of the industry, the organization. So I'm going to quickly talk about the tool that we have, we've developed as part of my research. So we have a tool which covers all these steps from very high level of requirement analysis, design, data collection, through the entire life cycle of data analytics applications. So we have different diagrams, and we define all these visual languages and notations that are easy to use for all the members. So we start from brainstorming diagram, which records all these tasks and subtasks that are generated in brainstorming part of the project. And then we have a process diagram, which considers all these organizations, stakeholders from different organizations. Then we go deeply to techniques and data items used throughout the project, data items that are created or generated, or data items that are used throughout the project. And we finally have output and deployment diagram. So for output diagram, it helps all the stakeholders and members to make agreements on what they are expected, what they expect to see, or what they're expected to do. I'm going to talk about our tool with a property price, with a real property price example, where it's a domain expert who's a real estate manager is deciding to apply some data analytics to improve the solution and to attract more customers. And they don't have any existing solutions. So what they need to do is to hire a group of data scientists and software engineers to do all these. And because there's no existing problem, they need to start from scratch of defining the problem and collecting data information. And then and they also need to assign a real estate manager to this project to work with this group of people. So this is the brainstorming. I haven't included all these notations because it's just an overview of what we're doing. So this is a brainstorming diagram that we have created for this property price prediction example. So we've defined all these tasks, and they're based on physics of notation. So there are a lot of rules behind how to choose all these notations and shapes and colors. And as you can see, we've separated all these tasks to different data operations, AI operations, and different stakeholders and users are working on different parts of this diagram. And they also share comments for each other. They leave comments for each other. They work together throughout the project. So we have different tasks, subtasks. So these green ones here are the tasks, and then we have subtasks, we have comments, and it starts from project, and we have separators. And then we have these technique diagrams, which goes to the techniques that are used or are going to be used for different tasks in a more technical level. And then we have a data diagram, which considers all these items generated and used in different stages for different tasks and subtasks. And then we have output diagram, which visualizes all these outputs that are expected to be generated throughout the project. We also have this process diagram, which shows different organizations, different stakeholders in different organizations, and how they're communicating with each other. So what we're going to do next is to just hide and unhide some of this information if you think it's very complicated to read and understand. So in the right side, you can see the notations that are defined, and then a process diagram that's created for these. And then we have a tool. So our approach is called BDML, And then we have a tool which is called binominal tool, and we have defined all these notations, and users can drag and drop items to this drawing area. They can add or delete items and leave comment for the other members of the team to work on. And then we have all these subgraphs. We create all these graphs and subgraphs, and then finally we can embed code, Python code, to these diagrams. And there are already some Python code embedded to the tool, so users can generate code, and then they can also generate report from this. So in the report, we have all these diagrams that are generated, that are created, and then we have explanation for all these all these notations and different responsibilities. So here is another example for traffic prediction at Monash. We also use the tool for traffic prediction. And you can see how complicated this problem is. We have stakeholders from public transport, Victoria. We have users from e-research at Monash. We have software engineers at Deakin University. They're all working together. You can see there are many, many different organizations and users. And they just communicate with each other through these visual languages. And it is based on GitHub, so they can just work on it from different locations all around the world. They can just commit changes and go from there. And we have also evaluated this using a group of using a walkthrough with a group of software engineers and data scientists. And you can see some of the generated diagrams. And we also did the physics of notation evaluation, which evaluates whether the notations and shapes are following physics of notation rules or not. So that was a summary of that was just an introduction of what we do. And for summary, so I discussed the challenges, what big data analytics are, and what are the challenges industry is facing in using and applying data analytics to improve their decision making, and the existing tools and techniques for data analytics applications, and what are the gaps. And finally, I introduced our tool. And we are working on the tool. We're having a lot of future works, and we are happy to collaborate if you are interested. So we're planning to have a web-based version of the layout, an automatic layouting version of the tool. And we also working on the code mining. So the current version is based on the code that's embedded to the tool, but we are working on mining the existing code repositories, and then learn from those existing code repositories. It could be internal code repository of the industry or organization, and then or some open source external or repositories. And then we're planning to learn from those and recommend and have a recommender system, which not only can be used for modeling the problem and generating code, it can be also used for recommending some of the existing data sets and tools, methods, models that users can use, and also recommending the code based on those existing source code. And we're also planning to apply, so we are also using our tool for Smart City project at Monash, and we are planning to collaborate more with industry. We are planning to apply our tool to some real-world data analytics problems. So if you have a data analytics problem and you are interested, please come talk to me. And thanks a lot.
So we might have some time for some questions. Does anyone have any from the audience? A bit overwhelmed with all the data. I guess one of the questions I do have here is, one of the challenges, I work in blockchain technology, but one of the biggest challenges is getting consensus on data. Yeah. So you mentioned at the start that there's an awful lot of work that you have to do a lot of cleansing and sort of stuff. So what are the major barriers you see with the industry uptaking data analytics in understanding it as a useful tool for decision making? Is it education? Is it leadership? Or is it, they're still unaware of how to actually approach data analytics?
Yeah, I think the problem is that they're all aware of this data analytics which is a really cool solution, and they can apply it. They can improve the solutions, the decision making, but it's a black box. No one knows what's going on inside. So even this machine learning and data science tools that are or models that we use, no one's knowing yet what's going on inside. And it's a bit, so I was working, the price prediction project was based on my own experience as part of my internship at one of the banks in Australia. And the problem was that they were just using a simple decision tree because they were scared of using a more advanced tool and then not knowing what's going on inside and not being able to explain their solution. So I think that's one of the problems that they are hesitated to use that. Or they're using them, many different organizations using, but it's only a very small percentages of the industry that's using.
Does anyone have any more questions? All right, well, we might actually bring the session to close. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.